My brother tackled my groom before the vows. I screamed, and only afterward did I realize he'd just tried to save my life. As I walked down the aisle, my brother sprinted past me with a gas can, drenched the altar in fuel, and set it ablaze. He then tackled my fiancée into the burning floral arrangements. My veil caught fire as guests panicked and rushed for the exits, shouting. My brother pinned my fiancé in the flames, striking him and shouting something I couldn't make out above the chaos. A groomsman dragged my brother away while my fiancé writhed on the ground, suffering second-degree burns on his hands and arms. My mother sobbed so violently she vomited on her dress. My father screamed at my brother for ruining our family, and 300 guests were on their phones calling 911. My brother kept resisting the 4 men restraining him, blood streaming from a nose wound where the best man had struck him, still shouting that my fiancée had been trying to kill me. People tended to my burned and bleeding fiancée, who was crying, while older guests needed medical attention from the panic. The flower girl was inconsolable. The priest prayed over the wrecked altar as a bridesmaid wailed that my brother had destroyed the most important day of my life. Security arrived to arrest him. While officers cuffed him, my brother screamed, his voice raw from smoke, that I'd been poisoned with mercury for months, and that the champagne he was about to hand me at the toast was laced and would have killed me before the cake. The room fell silent, except for the remaining fire as my brother spoke fast, knowing he had seconds before they hauled him away. He pointed out my trembling hands and my hair falling out in clumps, symptoms I'd been blaming on wedding stress. He said the confusion I'd felt was mercury poisoning from makeup he claimed my fiancée had been swapping since March. I touched my thinning hair and thought of the strands I found on my pillow each morning. My brother produced screenshots and texts from his phone. Messages he said showed my fiancée asking a pharmacist friend about lethal doses and how to make a death look like sudden illness, plus receipts for mercury compounds bought with cryptocurrency, so they couldn't be traced. My fiancé tried to stand, but the best man restrained him. I noticed the grip shift from supportive to controlling as doubt crossed the best man's face. My brother added that my fiancé had taken out a $3 million life insurance policy on me last month without my knowledge, and that a syringe of concentrated mercury had been hidden in their honeymoon luggage. My aunt, who is a nurse, approached the champagne table, dipped a finger into my glass, and recoiled, saying it smelled metallic and chemical. Guests started searching mercury poisoning symptoms on their phones and looked at me, recognizing signs we'd all chalked up to stress. My brother then showed bank records, suggesting my fiancé had been siphoning money from my savings in small amounts I hadn't noticed because I was disoriented. But my brother said there was more. He claimed my fiancé had given me a partial dose that morning in my smoothie, timed so it would worsen at the reception and mask the murder as natural illness. The antidote window, he said, was closing fast. Mercury binds to organs within hours. My brother said he'd broken into my fiancé's apartment the night before and found a journal documenting doses, symptoms, and calculations from 6 months of poisoning. He told police at 2 a.m., but the chief, who is my fiancé's uncle, declined to act and warned my fiancé that my brother was causing trouble. That's when my brother decided the only way to save me was to stop the wedding, and he lit the altar to make sure the ceremony ended. The crowd turned to my fiancé. His expression shifted from wounded to cold as he realized his plan had been exposed in front of 300 witnesses. 2 groomsmen seized him, but adrenaline and pain made him move faster than expected. He grabbed the ornamental cake knife from the nearby table and lunged toward me. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." A portion of the burning altar collapsed, sending sparks across the floor and making everyone flinch, including my fiancé. I shoved my elbow into his scorched ribs hard enough for his grip to loosen. I dropped my weight and twisted away from the blade. The knife grazed my shoulder, ripping my dress and cutting my skin. I hit the marble floor hard. Before he could reach me, 3 officers tackled him, knocking the knife away and pinning him. His scorched hands left bloody prints on the white marble as he struggled. EMTs rushed to me while officers cuffed my fiancé, who screamed that I deserved it for being blind to his help for 6 months. My brother broke free of the men holding him and dropped to his knees beside me, apologizing through tears and blood for not finding another way to stop it. EMTs bandaged my shoulder and said I needed immediate hospital treatment called chelation therapy for mercury poisoning. My mother collapsed into my father's arm as he told my brother, voice breaking, that he had saved my life. They put me on a stretcher and rushed me past stunned guests, the smoking altar ruins, and the champagne table where my glass still sat. In the ambulance, ENT Blake started an IV and explained that mercury poisoning required rapid treatment to prevent permanent organ damage. My body shook, not from fear, but because the toxin was attacking my nervous system. Blake spoke calmly about the therapy, but my vision blurred and my head felt fuzzy. At the emergency room, the same Blake continued my care. He ordered blood tests to confirm mercury levels and connected monitors to my chest. Blake said 2 medications would bind to mercury so my body could eliminate it, and that my brother's intervention had gotten us there in time. The blood draw made me dizzy. My hands trembled uncontrollably. Blake said such tremors were common and should improve with treatment, though recovery could take weeks or months. Blake later told me my mercury levels were alarmingly high, far beyond what they usually see even in industrial exposures, showing my fiancé had administered large quantities. The chelation burned my veins and made me nauseous, but Blake said that was a sign it was working, drawing mercury from my organs, where it had built up for months. My parents arrived with my aunt, who peppered Blake with medical questions. A detective in a dark suit, Detective Cara Holt, came in and began documenting my case. She took statements and listened as Blake described my levels. She then left and returned with evidence bags containing the champagne glass and a sample of the morning smoothie. Field tests showed extremely high mercury amounts in both, enough to be fatal. My brother arrived escorted by 2 officers, burned and swollen-eyed. Detective Holt instructed that the handcuffs be removed. She viewed his actions as protective and released him on his own recognizance. He stood staring at me, relieved, while nurses drew more blood for testing. Results confirmed nearly fatal mercury levels, but Blake said the interrupted dose meant my organs hadn't completely failed. He began aggressive chelation therapy, warning that I'd need repeated rounds over the next 3 months and close monitoring to clear the mercury. The police chief, my fiancé's uncle, stormed in, demanding to see his nephew. But Detective Holt suspended him pending investigation for obstruction of justice and presented paperwork showing state police had taken over jurisdiction. He raged about litigation and left slamming the doors. She sent someone to follow him to prevent interference. Rachel Monroe from the district attorney's office arrived to take my statement. I told her about months of symptoms, confusion, shaking, and how my fiancé had seemed caring when I was sick. Rachel said they would charge him with first-degree attempted murder, poisoning, and fraud, confident they could convict with the evidence and witnesses. The wedding photographer handed over memory cards with video of the attack and the knife incident. Detective Holt seized them as crucial evidence. Victor Shaw, a lawyer, introduced himself as my brother's counsel. My brother told him he didn't want a defense saying he was insane. He knew exactly what he had done and would do it again to save me. Victor pushed for a temporary insanity or necessity defense, but my brother refused, saying he'd rather go to jail than apologize for preventing a murder. Blake returned with hair sample test results showing rising mercury levels over 6 months, matching my brother's timeline and the notebook he found. The hair analysis, tracing increasing doses month by month, corroborated the journal and showed systematic poisoning intended to avoid a rapid death. Blake said such evidence was rare because most poisoning victims die before testing. My brother's intervention not only saved my life, but preserved proof. My hands shook more as reality settled in. The person I was about to marry had been intentionally poisoning me for months, watching me get sicker while posing as supportive. Detective Holt photographed everything and said the combination of journal, tests, and witness accounts would make innocence impossible to claim. She promised to build a case that would keep him from harming anyone again. The next morning, Detective Holt called to report they'd arrested the pharmacist friend at his workplace. He tried to flee, but was caught in the parking lot and was now in custody with counsel. Authorities had tracked the cryptocurrency payments and seized hundreds of texts between him and my fiancé, discussing doses and cover-ups. 2 days later, my fiancé was formally charged with attempted first-degree murder, poisoning, fraud, and assault with a deadly weapon for using the knife. Bail was denied because the court found him a flight risk and a danger. The courthouse was packed with media and guests. My fiancé sat in an orange jumpsuit, his bandaged hands still charred, glaring at me. After 5 days in the hospital, I was discharged, but I needed daily chelation treatments that left me weak and nauseous. My hands kept trembling, and hair fell out in clumps. The insurer called to say the $3 million policy was void for fraud and insurance fraud charges were added. My brother faced arson and assault charges, but Rachel recommended reduced charges because his actions saved my life. The judge sentenced him to probation and community service instead of jail, calling his conduct justified under the circumstances. The media turned the wedding fiasco into front-page news. Reporters camped outside my parents' house. We hired a publicist to handle inquiries and keep me away from cameras during medical appointments. The church initially billed $30,000 for fire damage, but rescinded it after our publicist explained the situation. The priest apologized for missing signs of abuse and offered free therapy. Several guests later told Detective Holt they'd noticed odd behavior by my fiancé around my drinks at past events, admitting now they felt guilty for not speaking up sooner. Detective Holt searched my fiancé's laptop and found months of queries about mercury poisoning, timing of death, and articles about countries that don't extradite to the U.S. The bank probe showed he'd siphoned over $40,000 from my accounts in small amounts I hadn't detected. Applied for credit cards in my name with $20,000 in debt, and bought items he might resell. Each new discovery strengthened the case. If convicted, he faced decades in prison. The pharmacist's lawyer offered a deal: testify against my fiancé in exchange for a reduced sentence, which Rachel said they'd likely accept because his testimony would seal the case. My parents changed their phone number after relentless reporter calls and installed security cameras when someone tried to climb the fence for photos. Public reaction split over whether my brother was a hero or a criminal, though most sided with him. My fiancé's family tried to visit him in jail, but he declined, likely realizing conviction was probable. His mother sent a lawyered letter blaming me for his downfall. I discarded it and instructed my attorney to issue a cease and desist. The fire marshal's final report supported my brother's defense, calling the altar fire a legitimate emergency response necessary to stop an imminent murder. That report helped reduce charges against my brother, showing his actions were proportionate given the threat. Victor Shaw said it would likely lead to most charges being dropped or significantly reduced. At a follow-up with Dr. Samuel, I learned my mercury levels were falling, but mercury causes lasting nerve damage. I was told my hands would likely retain a mild tremor when tired or anxious, and that some cognitive effects could persist. I realized I would carry physical evidence of what had been done to me for the rest of my life. A month after the wedding, a grand jury indicted my fiancé on 15 counts, including attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault, identity theft, and fraud. His lawyer offered a 15-year plea, but Rachel demanded at least 25 years, saying she wanted him locked up so he couldn't harm anyone again. My brother came over one evening while our parents were away, and we sat on the back porch where we had played as kids. That's when he told me everything about that night, how he had broken into the apartment, found the hidden notebook, and read my fiancé's notes about my symptoms worsening. He had even calculated how much more mercury I could survive and planned how to act once I died. My brother had tried calling me, but my fiancé had secretly blocked his number on my phone. At 2 a.m., going to the police chief was his last attempt at getting help. But when the chief called my fiancé, instead of arresting him, my brother knew I had only hours left. In desperation, he bought a gas can at an all-night station, thinking of other ways to stop the wedding, but burning the altar was the only option he could see. We both cried as I told him I could never thank him enough for saving me. 2 months after the wedding, the state police arrested the chief for obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Phone records showed he had called my fiancé immediately after my brother presented the evidence. He had also destroyed the original report and ordered officers to ignore related calls. His 30-year career ended, and he faced up to 5 years in prison, though many expected less. Watching him handcuffed on the news felt like a small step toward justice. After 3 months, I tried returning to work, but it was harder than expected. Mercury had damaged my concentration, and I often lost track mid-task. My hands shook while typing, and I had to rest every hour due to exhaustion. Thankfully, my boss allowed me to work from home with flexible hours. Still, I questioned whether I'd ever feel normal again. When threatened with prison, the pharmacist who had helped my fiancé broke down. His lawyer contacted Rachel, offering testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence. He had kept records of every discussion about dosing, timing, and disguising the poisoning. Texts revealed my fiancé asking about drug interactions and autopsy detection. The pharmacist's notes even showed plans for a final injection during our honeymoon. With this evidence, conviction was almost certain. The week before the trial, my parents announced their separation. The stress had exposed deeper issues. My mother accused my father of pressuring me to marry and ignoring her concerns, while my father blamed her for missing the signs of abuse. They had been arguing non-stop since the wedding, and finally chose to part ways. Watching my family fall apart made me despise my fiancé more than the poisoning itself. Detective Holt soon called me during treatment. She had uncovered monthly payments my fiancé made to a storage facility months before our engagement. Inside, the hazmat team found 12 vials of mercury, preloaded syringes, and a notebook outlining backup plans if the wedding attempt failed. He had intended to keep poisoning me gradually, making it appear as a chronic illness while pretending to be a devoted husband. There were also forged medical papers suggesting I had a family history of neurological issues. When Holt told me he had even prepared mercury-filled children's bottles to stage an accident, I vomited. For 6 more months, I continued treatment, initially 3 times a week, then less frequently. Dr. Samuel monitored my mercury levels until they finally dropped into the safe range. Finding those 12 vials left me wondering whether he had planned this only for me or if he had done it before. My hair grew back thinner and different, and although my tremors improved, they never fully went away. Some days, headaches and confusion made even simple tasks overwhelming. Dr. Samuel reminded me how fortunate I was to survive without permanent kidney damage. 8 months after the wedding, the trial began. Jury selection took 2 weeks due to media coverage, with jurors pulled from other counties. Seeing my fiancé in court made me physically ill. I had to run to the restroom before testimony. He looked thinner, with scars on his arms from the fire, but his eyes were as cold as the night he held a knife to my throat. I testified for 3 days, recounting the lies, symptoms, and how he had isolated me. His lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, but medical records proved otherwise. She argued I was careless for missing financial red flags, but I explained how the poisoning clouded my judgment and how he dismissed my symptoms as wedding stress. When I described the knife at my throat, several jurors were visibly shaken. My brother testified next. Overcome with guilt about the fire, he cried when the prosecutor presented the notebook entry, "Tomorrow she dies." He explained how he found the evidence, tried to get help, and ultimately set the fire when no one else would act. The courtroom was silent as he spoke about watching me decline without realizing why. The pharmacist then testified under a plea deal, admitting his role while showing texts where my fiancé asked how to disguise poisoning as natural illness. He confirmed he provided the exact substances and instructions. Meanwhile, my fiancé glared at him with fury. The defense attempted to argue temporary insanity, but evidence of months of planning proved otherwise. After 5 days, the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all charges. My fiancé showed no reaction, but his mother shouted that I had ruined their family. At sentencing, I delivered a statement about losing my trust, health, and sense of safety. I spoke about nightmares, therapy, and the fear that kept me from leaving home. The judge called it one of the most deliberate attempted murders he had seen in 30 years and sentenced my fiancé to 35 years, with no parole for 25. 3 weeks later, the police chief's trial began. Despite his uniform and composure, records showed he had warned my fiancé immediately after my brother came forward. Texts revealed he told him to handle it, which pushed the plan forward. Found guilty of obstruction and abuse of power, He received 2 years in state prison, loss of his pension, and permanent decertification. A month later, the pharmacist faced sentencing. Though he had fully cooperated, the judge noted that providing poison was still attempted murder. He received 5 years, with possible release in 2, and permanent loss of his license. He was also ordered to pay restitution, likely bankrupting him. My brother began community service, teaching fire safety at the same center where we took childhood lessons. His engaging style made him popular with kids, despite whispers from parents about the church fire. Around this time, I joined a victim support group where I met Victor. He understood my fears, never pressured me, and slowly became part of my life. My parents finalized their divorce that fall, but found they worked better as friends, supporting me together in therapy and recovery. On the 1-year anniversary of the wedding, I spent the day with my brother, who proudly showed me his fire safety certificate. Our bond had grown stronger than ever. The church invited me to a blessing of the rebuilt altar, but I declined. I could never return without reliving that night. My fiancé later tried sending me a letter through his mother, but Victor destroyed it unopened. I had no interest in his words. 2 years after the wedding, Victor proposed quietly in my kitchen. We chose a simple courthouse ceremony with only family. Though my health had mostly recovered, the tremors and thinner hair remained as reminders of survival. Meanwhile, my brother found new purpose teaching fire safety, eventually meeting someone who cared for him deeply. Their relationship gave our family a sense of healing. 3 years after the wedding, I testified at the state capitol in support of the Protective Partners Act, which added safeguards for financial, medical, and insurance red flags in relationships. With my brother and Victor beside me, the bill passed with strong support. The governor gave me the signing pen, which now rests beside our wedding photo. A year later, Victor and I welcomed our daughter, Sophie, named after my aunt who first confirmed the poisoning. My brother wept when holding her, promising to protect her as he once protected me. Over time, life slowly rebuilt. My brother became a respected fire investigator. My parents moved forward in healthier relationships, and I found peace in ordinary moments, like Sophie's birthday parties. 10 years later, I live with only faint reminders, a scar, an occasional tremor, but surrounded by people who truly want me alive and well. And that is more than enough.